So we'll go through a little bit of scheme information first on my PowerPoint. Then I'll switch over to the website and I'll show you where to find what you need. So all of these little bits that I say in the scheme information, I'll point you to where they are on the website so that you can find them nice and easily. And then we'll look at using the online platform, like the online games and things like that as well. Now, we have recently done a webinar called Discover PhonicShed. That is a bit more if you have not bought PhonicShed yet and you want to figure out if PhonicShed is right for your school. So if that's the situation you're in, that webinar might be really useful to go and have a look at as well. But today we're looking at if you've just got the scheme and you've got logged in and you just need to know where to go next. So we'll start with the scheme information. So PhonicShed is split into 4 chapters and all of our chapters are colour coded. We've got chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 and chapter 4. So it's a little bit like the letters and sounds phases, but ours are called chapters and they are slightly different. There are some slight differences between the phases of letters and sounds and the chapters of PhonicShed, which I'll talk about in a second. If you are coming from a different phonics scheme and you want to know a little bit more about how PhonicShed matches with a different phonics scheme, you can always email us to find out some more information. So chapter 1 is all about your pre-reading skills, your speaking and listening skills, instrumental sounds, environmental sounds, going on sound walks and all of the things that help develop the phonemic awareness and the phonetic knowledge that we need to start learning our letter sound correspondences. These letter sound correspondences will start in chapter 2. That's where we learn, we start with S, A, T and P, learning the sounds S, A, T, P. And we move all the way through doing all the letters of the alphabet in chapter 2. We do Q, U together as a digraph and we do some other simple digraphs as well in chapter 2. For example, C, K with the K and all the double letter sounds like M, M, D, D, things like that. And your common double letters like F, F and L, L are all in there too. Now, once we've got those initial sounds, we also, at the same time, we teach the letter names and we teach the capital letters. And once we've got those, we can move on to chapter 3, which is where we learn further digraphs and we learn some trigraphs as well. So this starts with all your consonant digraphs, moving on to your vowel sounds, your long vowel sounds and some other vowel sounds in there too. So by the end of chapter 3, you've got at least one phoneme, one grapheme, sorry, for every phoneme in the language other than the j phoneme, which will come in chapter 4. Now, chapter 4 has 3 separate parts within it. You start with 4A, which is where you get some alternative graphemes. For example, dawn the fawn, compared to in chapter 3, we learn OR for the OR sound. Here we're getting a different grapheme for that same phoneme. In chapter 4B, we look at the graphemes that we already know. Like we've already learned that OW represents the OW sound, but here we're looking at it representing the O sound. So it's the alternative pronunciations of the known graphemes. And in chapter 4C, we look at further spelling patterns, those rarer GPCs that children will still need to go a little bit further in phonics. So spring lamb there and autumn leaves, showing the MB and the MN for the phoneme. So that's just a little bit about our chapter progression there. If you have a look on our website, you will find the long-term and the medium-term plans. So this shows where these chapters will fit within your teaching. So if you are a nursery teacher, that's where you want to be starting with chapter 1. And we don't usually recommend starting that straight away in autumn. It's usually about halfway through that spring term instead. Reception, you'll be covering chapter 2 and chapter 3. And then in year 1, you've got chapter 4A and 4B before your phonics screening check. And then chapter 4C will start after the phonics screening check and continue into year 2. Now, we have got a big document called the Teaching Guidance, which comes with all the PhonicShed packs, and it's got loads of information in. You can also find it online, and on the online version, all of the links are hyperlinked. So if I wanted to look at chapter 2, I can just click on chapter 2 and it takes me straight to those pages instead. I'll show you where to find that. Now, like I said, that long-term plan is broken into medium-term plans as well. So there's one available for nursery, reception year 1 and year 2. And in here, it shows you exactly which GPCs you'll be teaching in which weeks. So this really is your guide point for what lessons you need to be using for each of your weeks. Now, these are based on 6-week half terms, and we know that not all terms fit like that. You don't get nice little blocks of 6 sometimes, so it might vary around the holidays according to your school. So with each GPC, so that's the grapheme phoneme correspondences, you do get a video with a little explanation of the pronunciation and the character. So I've just got one to show you here for the sound.
The letter H. The character for this letter is has the hen. The capital letter is made by Haz's hen house. The sound they make is the letter name is H. The sound is the action for this sound is
So by using these, you can ensure that all the teachers are saying the phoneme accurately and that you are able to ensure consistency across your school too. We have all our lesson plans available digitally, so you get a weekly overview of the lessons, which you can just look at a glance. And when you're really familiar with Phonics, they will be really, really helpful. However, when you first start off, you might want to use our daily lesson plans, which explain in more detail how to teach each of the concepts as you're going through and explain the lesson structure in a little bit more detail too. And with each of your lesson plans, which you can download from the website when you're ready, you will also get a set of resources. So in the lesson plan, it might say use resource 2, and then you find in the accompanying document the resource to match that part of the lesson. So these might be things like lyrics for the songs of Phonics. It might be reading different words, it might be writing tasks, or it might be games that are linked to it as well. And if you want to know more about the CPD, the best place to have a look is the Ready, Set, Go training. So this is a free training. It's 2 hours long that comes with Phonics. So when you sign up to Phonics, you'll be able to access this, and that will be the where to go to for a bit more in detail, because I know this is only a very brief overview here. So we'll have a look at the online platform next. I've just got a couple of things that I want to say. Your account might look a little bit different depending on who you are. So if you're a teacher that's part of a school that signed up to Phonics and you didn't have anything to do with contacting us and sorting out the licenses and things like that, you'll probably just have a regular account. You don't need to worry about inputting the children yourself. Please allow the admin users in your school to do that. You should see your class, and if you don't, let the admin user know in your school. Now, if you are the lead person for Phonics in your school, maybe you were the one that sorted out the account, made the decision to get Phonics, it'll probably make you the admin user of the EdShed account. You can have more than one admin, so you might have a few admins in your school. If you need help with inputting children, please watch Getting Set Up with SpellingShed for admin users. I know it says SpellingShed, but it covers all the EdShed products. It's all using the same account setup there, so you don't need to worry about having different ones for Phonics, SpellingShed and MathShed. So we'll go through a few things on the website, like how to play interactive games, set them at home, read the ebooks, look at the lesson tools. I'll just flick over to the website. So here, when you log in to edshed.com, it should look a little bit like this. If yours doesn't look like this and you've still got all of these logos for our different products along the top bar instead, you're probably on phonicshed.com rather than edshed.com. So I just click the EdShed logo in the top left corner to bring you to this page that looks the same as mine. I'll just zoom in a little bit so you can hopefully see it a little bit bigger. Now, once you've first logged in, and you've not been on Phonics before, you might want to know where to find those long-term plans, medium-term plans, and the guidance that I've been talking about, because that will probably be the best information to get you going with the scheme. So if you click on Phonics on the left-hand side, then in select section here, you can select the whole scheme overview and planning. So this is where you can find that long-term and medium-term plan to get you to know which bits you're meant to be teaching. And in the guidance and training section, you will find our teaching guidance and our Ready, Set, Go training video that I mentioned. Another really helpful document is the GPC and character overview document. So I'll just download this to show you briefly. Here, this shows you all the grapheme phoneme correspondences. So they're all on there, along with the letter names, the characters, the actions, the formation rhymes to go with them, and a link to the guidance videos on there too. So you've got all of that information and all of the progression within there. Okay, going down here, there are some other useful documents that you might find you need once you get going with the scheme a little bit more. The alphabetic code chart is really helpful. You've got our decodable reading scheme guidance and the fluency assessment that I really would make sure you have a look at in there. So that's in the guidance and training section. You've also got your whole scheme overview and planning to find the long-term plan and the medium-term plan in there. We do have some extra resources in this one too, like word lists for each chapter, different types of sound mats, and the decodable reading scheme information is also in there. So that's where to find all the long-term plans, the big picture. Once you've found out, oh, okay, so I'm in reception, I'm meant to be starting with chapter 2. I then go to chapter 2 to find all of my lesson resources. So in here, you'll see this is all in the same order as it is on the medium-term plan, starting with the chapter 1 skills recap, and then looking at the sets for the sounds. So if I go in set 1, for example, in here, I can see my lesson plans here. There's extra planning for consolidation and intervention. We have lots of guidance about how to use that effectively in those folders that I was just talking about, and also in the Ready, Set, Go training. If I click on my planning one, I can download the digital planning and the resources there as well. So I've just downloaded them. There's my weekly overview of the lesson planning. I then get guidance pages for each week and some other classroom provision activity ideas before my individual lesson plans for each of the GPCs. And then the other document I downloaded was the resources. So I'll have all of the resources to match that lesson throughout there. Now, throughout Phonics, because it's got so many interactive elements, you get your songs, you've got all your characters, your formation rhymes. We've got a lesson viewer to help support showing these on the screen. So if you see this purple bar here, if you just click that start button there, it will start the lesson viewer in the order that's on our lesson plan. So you'll start with your teaching book and you can go on to the next page here. These are exactly the same as the printed book. So if you've got the printed teaching books, this will match it exactly. You can press go full screen here if you need a bigger view of your lesson viewer. The next one will be your letter formation, and you'll also have that for the uppercase too. And then you can listen to your song for that lesson there as well. Your guidance video for how to do it for the teachers is also on the end of the lesson viewer there. So you are able to access that there, or you can click on one of the elements. For example, if you wanted to watch the guidance video before you start your lesson, you can click on that straight away and it will take you straight to it. You might also find helpful things in there like the book lists and the flashcards in that same folder there. And then you just go into each of your sets folders to find the next bit of planning that you are looking for. So that's most of the where to find your lesson plans. You might also want to have a look at some of these other headings which might have some helpful resources in there for you. I'm just going to take you back to the home page for a second because At the top up here, so I've shown you where the Ready, Set, Go training is, but you will also have access to champion training. So if you click on there, there should be a little pink banner that says Become an EdShed Champion. If I click on that, it will take me to the different trainings that I can complete. So I've finished my spelling shed and my phonics shed. I need to finish my math shed one. And once I have finished them, I get a certificate and a badge. So they are a really helpful starting point with how to get going with the phonics shed scheme. Now, if I go back over to phonics shed, so I've done most of what's in the scheme section here. In system, you can find some of our online tools, like our letter tiles tool. Here you can drag the letters up to spell words and make sure you click them together. So if I snap them together just like that, and then I select it, I can put the sound buttons on, I can play the word out loud and look it up in the dictionary. There's lots of different things on this tool to have a play with, and you've got all your graphemes from all the different chapters up there, and an option to change the font between the curly K and the not curly K if you'd like to. The other useful tool in here is the flashcards tool, which you might want to use for your lesson. So again, if you order a physical pack, you will have flashcards in with that. There's large ones and there's also small ones, depending on whether you're using them for your class or your intervention. But you can also use them digitally. So here, I've selected my flashcards. I like to use the advanced mode, but you can just say, oh, I want all the flashcards from Chapter 2, Set 1 to the end of Chapter 2, Set 5, and then bring them all up. Or I can click Advanced and I can choose whether I want some uppercase letters in there, if I want the curly version of the K, or if I want the straight version of the K, and I can select whole sets or whole chapters at a time. In here, I can drag them about if I want to. I can also press the shuffle button to shuffle them up. If you are teaching a card, that will make sure it's got the character side showing instead of the plain side showing. And you can put a timer on in the corner if you want to. So I'll just press start. And then it brings up all my flashcards in that order, starts the timer in the top corner, and I can use my arrow keys here. So if I press up, it will send the card back and I can look at it again. If I press down, it flips the card over so I can see the character side. If I press right, it will move on to the next card, and if I press left, it will move on to the previous card that I was on. If I click the card, it makes the sound that the sound is for. I can just press close at the top there when I'm done, or it will finish when you finish your session. You can do the same in there for high frequency word cards as well. If I launch a phonics assessment, that will take me through into the assessment tool. So in here, I can assess graphemes or lists of words, high frequency words, or use a phonics screening check simulator. Here, I then select my child that I want to assess. And if I press launch assessment, I'm just showing you the phonics screening check simulator one. I can start it with the practice if I want, or skip it, and then begin. And when I'm marking it, I can use my number keys to say correct or incorrect. So if I press 3, it will go as correct. If I press 2, it goes as nearly, and you can mark exactly which graphemes were nearly there. And if I press 1, it will go as incorrect. And again, you can mark exactly which graphemes there. The other thing in the system tab is your assignments. So if I create an assignment here, it will be either a phonics shed game or an ebook. So let me show you what the games in the ebooks look like first before we come back to this to show you how to set them. So I'm just going to press this yellow play game button in the top right corner, and that will take me more to what the children will see. So in here, if I go in the phonics shed garden, instead of any of the other products, I will see all of our phonics shed games. At the bottom, you've got all of our chapter 1 games here. And then if I go up the path, I can see all of the GPCs that I'm learning. So if I go on, it will bring up my card and I can press it for the sound. Or I can pick the game that I would like to play from there. If I pick one of the chapter 1 activities, like looking at the Phonics garden, I can look at all the different environmental sounds within. The other thing you can do on here is get to our bookshelf. So top right here, you've got a little book symbol. If I press that, that will be all the ebook versions of our decodable reading scheme. So you can read all of those online if you would prefer. And those you can also set to the children as assignments too. And the other button in the top right is just if you want to pick the game first and then pick which sound you're doing it with. It's just the other way around rather than picking the sound and then the game. I'm just going to press the menu button in the top left corner and then click on EdShed with the little house button to get back home. I'm going back to Phonics Shed here. And in my system, that's where I can see the assignments. They are also on the home page as well, but you can get to your Phonics Shed ones here. I can create an assignment, which will give me the chance to give it a title and put the dates for it and a time if I want to. And then the Phonics Shed ones are these dark pink ones here. So I can either choose a book and then pick which chapter and which book I want to do, and how many times I'd like the children to read the book. If I press that limit options, the children will only be able to access the things that I've put that switch on for until they've finished them. So if I do that for the books and the game, they'll see the books and the game. They'll be able to get on both. But if I do it for just the book and not the game, then they'll have to do the book first before they can see the game. If I press back, I can also have a look at the Phonics Shed games. Here you can either choose whether you're doing a chapter 1 game, which are those different body percussion games and things like that, or chapter 2, pick the game that I would like and pick the grapheme that I would like the children to do it with. And again, the number of games and limit the options. When I press save, it takes me on to picking who I'm doing it for. So you can set it for a whole year group, or if you want to have little subgroups within your class, you can do that as well. I'll show you where to set up the subgroups next. I can press track group just to add everybody that's in that group. And on the final tab, you can add in other teachers if you wish to. So I might add Amanda in as well. There we go. So that assignment will be set. And then when I press details, I can see how the children are doing with that assignment, how many games they've played, how well they're doing with it on their scores, and I can look in detail at their sessions if I need to. Okay, so I'm just going back to Phonics Shed over here. That's all the system bit. And you can see that assignment's now showing up there. Now I said if you want to set your class into subgroups, you can do that in the groups bit over here. So on this left-hand bar, everybody should see the ones that are under your account and the ones that are under school. Only admin users will be able to see this section at the bottom that says organisation. So if I go to groups, within my year ones, I might want to create little subgroups, which I can do just here. So if I create a group like blue or cyan, I've just named mine after colours. You can create a new group and then add pupils from your original group to that group. So if you want different settings and different assignments for different groups, you can do it that way. You can download your logins for your subgroups or for your whole group just with that yellow button there. And on this overview, you can see their scores, so you can see how well they've been doing with things over time there. Now just going back into Phonics Shed here, we'd said about here you can start a phonics assessment. Well, that will fill in our phonics assessment data. You can also launch an assessment from there too. But if I look at a year group, for example, reception, it will show me all my GPCs and how the children are doing with it if I've done an assessment with it. I can change the chapter that I'm looking at here, and you can see when it hasn't been assessed, it's just got a grey blob instead. Now, if I want to look, for example, at chapter 2 and look what the children were doing at the beginning of the year, at September, I can see what it was then, and I can compare it to now to see if there's any progression. And then on this print button here, this little yellow one, I can print the group report, so that's for you as a teacher. I can print individual pupil reports, so that's if you want to send them home for parents' evening, or I can print an empty grid if I find that helpful. So that will just be all the graphemes and all the names of your class, but it wouldn't have any data in it at all. It would just be blank boxes if you want to use it as a tick sheet. So that's on the graphemes tab just here. We've got the same for the high frequency words, which are just on that next tab there. You've still got the date function and you can change the chapter there too. Now on this little help tab, these ones here will be specific to Phonics, so you can always go there if you want to have a look at just how to find those things on Phonics. There is a help tab at the top on the right next to that play game button, which might be helpful. That's the whole of EdShed though, so there's lots and lots and lots of articles in there. The webinars tab, you can also find all our past webinars on there, so you can watch some of our old ones, including that Discover Phonics that I was talking about. And in the Spelling Shed section, you've got that Getting Set Up with Spelling Shed for admin users. Okay, so hopefully that's given you enough of a tour of the website and where to find our resources to get you going with Phonics. If you've got any questions, you can pop them in the chat and we'll have a look at them. Amanda might help me read them out. But thank you very much for coming to our webinar.